Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Codergirl.py. My name is Serenity, aka Codergirl. This is my friend Scooter, and today I'm going to introduce you to changing data types using Python. Hope you enjoy! Alright, so we have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. So in my IDE, you can see I have one new folder, data. In my data folder, I have two new files, data.py and error.py. Let's open up error.py first. So in error.py, we're trying to print out an integer. You can see I have a variable called number, and I set it to the integer 10. And then in a print statement, I have print the number was plus number. You might already see the error with this, but let's run this program to see the exact error. When I click the run button up top, you can see that we get this very cryptic and technical looking error. And you might not know what it means. So let's head back to error.py so I can kind of walk you through it. So when we ran this program, we got this error, which I have right here in the comments in error.py. You can see it says type error, can't convert int object to str implicitly. So what does this error mean? Basically, it's telling us that we're using an integer in a way that it can't be used as. Take a look at our program. The variable number is an integer 10. We then try to combine it in a print statement with a string, the number was. Remember that a string can only be combined with other strings. So, since our variable number is an integer, we can't combine it with the string the number was. That's why we get the error. In order to fix this error, we're going to have to change our variable number from an integer to a string. Luckily, Python has some functions that let us do just that. So let's exit out of error.py and head into data.py to see some of those functions. And wait for it to load. Alright, so in data.py, you can see I have a whole bunch of functions and a whole bunch of print statements. So let's walk through it one by one. The first function that we're going to cover today is int. Int is a function that returns the integer form of a piece of data. Int cannot work with arrays, or it can't work with strings containing letters or characters, like an exclamation mark, a question mark, or the letter A. To use int, write int, open parentheses, the data, and then closing parentheses, where data is a piece of data that int will return the integer form of. So you can see in data.py, I have some print statements that kind of show example usages of int. My first print statement is print int and then the string 1. Because a string does not contain letters or characters, we can use it with the function int. Int will take the string 1 and then return the integer form of that. So, since the integer form would be 1, int will return 1. Another print statement I have using int is print int 3.5. When used with floats, int will round down to the nearest integer. So, in 3.5, the function int will round down to the nearest integer. So, 3. Our other print statement is print int the string 12 plus 5. Because the string 12 does not contain any special characters or letters, we can use it with int. The function int will take the string 12 and return the integer form of that. So that would be the integer 12. That number, that 12, can then be added to 5 to get 17. And our final print statement is print int true. If you remember from my earlier episodes, true, the Boolean, also stands for the integer 1, and the Boolean false stands for the integer 0. Because I'm using true, and true stands for the integer 1, this will return 1. Alright, so the next function that we're going to cover is stir. Stir returns a string version of a piece of data. To use it, write stir, str, open parentheses, data, closing parentheses, where data is the data that stir will return the string form of. You can see, like with int, I have some example usages and print statements. For example, my first print statement is print stir, and then for the data we have an array which contains 3 objects: the string 1, the integer 1, and the integer 2. You can think of stir as adding just a set of quotation marks to the data. So the function stir will return the string version of this array. So that will be the string, open bracket, 1, comma 1, comma 2, closing bracket. Our next print statement that I use stir with is print stir 2.3. The function stir will return the string version of 2.3, so it will be the string 2.3, and so on. Our next function is float. Float returns the float version of a piece of data. To use it, write float, so float, open parentheses, data, closing parentheses, where data is the data that float will return the float version of. Like int, float cannot work with arrays or strings containing letters or characters. So you can see I have print, float, and then the string 2. Float will return the float version of the string 2. So we'll return the float 2.0. You can see we also use it with 1 and true, and it returns the float 1.0 for each. Perfect. Our next function is list. List returns an array version of a piece of data. It does not work for non-strings, so it does not work for ints, floats, or booleans. It works with some other data types, but we haven't covered those yet. So for now, just use strings. You can see I have 2 print statements. My first one is print list, and then the string 233. For each letter or character in the string given to the function list will make it a separate item in an array. So for list 233, for each character or letter in that string, list will make it a separate item. So you can see it returns an array containing 3 objects: the string 2, the string 3, and again the string 3. Notice that each item is stored as a string. Our next print statement with list is print list ABC. Again, for each letter or character in the string, list will make it a separate item in a new array. So this will return the array containing 3 objects: the string A, the string B, and the string C. And last but not least, we have our function bool. Bool returns a Boolean form of a piece of data. Watch out though, it behaves a little differently than the others. So let's see what I mean. For bool, if the data given to the function bool is empty, like an empty string or an empty array, so 2 brackets, bool will return false. If the data is not empty, bool will return true. So let's see some examples of bool. You can see my first print statement is print bool, and then I have an array containing the string s. Because the array that we gave to bool is not empty, it holds the string s, bool will return true. Our next print statement is print bool with no data given to it. Since nothing was given to bool, bool will return false. Next up, we have print bool and then the string I'm a string. Because the data we gave to bool is not empty, it's not an empty string, bool will return true. We have print bool and then an empty string. You can probably already guess that this will return false, since the data given to bool will be false. And last up, we have print bool 5. This returns true. You can't really check if an integer or a float is empty or not, so when given an integer or a float, bool will just return true. Alright, so that was a lot of work, and feel free to pause or rewatch parts of the video right here. But there is something more to cover. If nothing is inputted into the functions int, stir, list, float, or bool, they each return a default value. So the default value for int, if you use it without giving it any data, is the integer 0. The default value for stir without giving it any data is an empty string. The default value for list without giving it any data is an empty array, so 2 brackets. The default value for float without giving it any data is 0.0. And finally, the default value for bool without giving it any data is false. And you can see, if I run this program by clicking the run button up at top, it prints out all of the values for all of the function usages that we did. Perfect. Whew, that was a lot of functions to cover. And so take a break right now. But before we end this video, there's one last thing to cover. It's just some little terminology, so bear with me for one moment. In programming, when we refer to giving a function a piece of data, we call it passing that data to the function. For example, if I have the function bool and I use it with the integer 0, I'm passing the integer 0 to that function bool. Another quick bit of terminology, we call the data that is being passed to a function an argument. So let's say I have int 4.5. In that instance, we would be passing the argument 4.5 to the function int. A lot of new vocab, but that's okay. The more you practice with the functions we just learned, and the more you practice using the new terminology, passing an argument, the more you'll feel comfortable with them. And that's key to programming. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys later.